I'm John Dickerson. Join me for the Daily Report, weekdays on CBS News 24/7.
The first presidential debate, hosted by CNN, CBS News 24/7 will cover it live with our political team providing pre- and post-debate analysis. Stream tonight beginning at 5 here on CBS News 24/7.
Welcome to the Daily Report for Thursday, June 27th, 2024. I'm Jeff Glor, in for John Dickerson. Though not totally tonight, John will join us to set the table for tonight's seismic debate. Biden versus Trump, no audience, muted mics, commercial breaks. John will help us put everything in historical perspective. More big decisions from the Supreme Court, striking down a multi-billion-dollar opioid settlement and confirming an abortion ruling. Iran prepares to elect a new president, and one candidate says, quote, the nation might be forced to sell itself to Trump. The FAA says this is the single busiest travel day of the year. And two huge asteroids are passing close by Earth. Don't worry, they will not lead to disaster, but you might be able to get a look at one. The Daily Report starts right now. Hi, thanks for joining us. We begin a report with the first presidential debate of 2024. Where else? In 3 hours, President Biden and former President Donald Trump will face off for 90 minutes with no audience, no prepared notes allowed, and their mics muted when it's not their turn to speak. The venue is Atlanta, Georgia, the heart of a key battleground state, also one that was at the center of Trump's efforts to overturn the election the last time these two candidates went head-to-head for the presidency. Chief political analyst and the regular host of the Daily Report, John Dickerson, joins me now. John, I've never interviewed someone who's the host of their own show, but we'll give this a shot.
No, it's great. And viewers are like, wait, they've switched seats.
Hold on a second.
I'll come on Saturday.
We'll have, that'd be great. I heard at least two people on my way in today say this was the biggest campaign moment in decades. Is that hyperbole or anywhere close to fact?
We don't know until the debate happens. It's hyperbole, of course. There are a lot of people who are interested in making this a big campaign moment. But in a campaign that's so tight, any moment could be the big moment if something goes awry for one of the two candidates. But we also know historically that debates, despite all the hype, despite all the coverage, despite all the moments that we can recite, actually don't change anything. But of course, this year it's different. It's coming before the conventions, and we have two presidents facing off.
Let's talk about the timing. I mean, it's in June. We're almost not 4.5 months, but almost 4.5 months before the election. That is odd. It is odd.
Both candidates wanted it for different reasons. The incumbent wanted it more to create a choice between two candidates, not a referendum, right? He wants to hug Donald Trump and say, this is it. Don't judge me against some abstract notion of what I could have done. Judge me against who the alternative candidate is. But it also could mean that this gets digested and passes through, and we are on to the next thing soon enough. In other words, it happens too early in the cycle to actually have an impact. Again, it'll really depend on what happens in the evening and then how everybody reacts to that.
CBS polling seems to indicate that most people are watching tonight not thinking their minds are going to be changed, but more for the amusement, I guess, of watching this, the theater of it.
Yeah, which should keep our expectations low about debates are important, but they're not the whole bundle. When you think about what it means to be a president and what the challenges of the job are, a lot of those don't come up in a debate. For example, decision-making skills. You don't test that in a debate. So we should always remember that what we're seeing on the stage is not the same as what the job actually is. But to that polling number, what it shows us is we live in a partisan country, and a lot of people are going to vote for whichever team they're going to vote for, and the results of this evening won't matter.
I got a funny reaction the other day when I suggested the debate might even lean into being boring because the mics are muted and because there's commercial breaks. Is that going to interfere with the normal energy you see in a debate?
The lack of an audience will interfere with it also depends on how the two men decide whether they want to inject energy into the evening. But I think the lack of an audience will matter in terms of the energy. And also just, we could hope, I think the best thing for America would be a boring debate, because that means it would actually talk about the things that matter. There are huge questions in front of the country, and actually getting to the heart of those questions would be boring, but also would be terribly useful. Anything that's too exciting might distract us from all of these real questions we have to answer.
You're always so great at putting these things in perspective. I mean, where do we look at this in terms of the evolution of debates and how we got to this moment?
We got to this moment because television entered into all of our lives, and it became presidential campaigns always take on the flavor of the culture. So when America became a television culture, debates came into the center of the presidency because it was something everybody could watch. People could make a judgment based on their own eyes. What a wonderful thing for democracy. What we then learned is that sometimes what we saw in the debate was different from the way that people behaved in the rest of their lives. And that's one of the key things to remember about this debate. We have more information about these two men and how they will perform under the tests of the office than we have ever had before. So what happens on the debate stage may inform us, but the real thing is their records and their temperament and their character, as attested to by the people who've worked with them.
It's the same thing with conventions. They used to actually do something, and then they just became theater.
That's exactly right.
So is there a way that someone can gauge, I guess we're maybe going to see it on television, like we'll know immediately whether it's a win or a loss?
Yeah, if there's a huge fumble when Gerald Ford in 1976 said there was no Soviet domination of Eastern Europe, people were like, that's a problem. So if there's a moment like that.
When Dukakis responds in a certain way that
right.
Bernard King asks him a question.
And that's a great example. How Dukakis responded to this hypothetical question about his wife being assaulted has nothing to do with the office.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the office, but it mattered a lot in the campaign. In the Ford case, where he said there's no Soviet domination of Eastern Europe, that mattered. We were in the middle of the Cold War. If the president doesn't know what the main threat, and that's the thing to watch for, is do these two men, one of whom perpetrates a lie about the last election, which is an act of fantasy, do they see the world clearly, the threats America faces, and do they have a plan? That's really important information to have.
Which candidate has more pressure on them?
Biden. He's the incumbent, and he's in trouble. I mean, voters are in his own party are not as enthusiastic for him as they are for the other candidate. He is not where you want to be as an incumbent in the battleground states. And he has this pervasive question about the optics of his behavior, which is not what the presidency is about, but it is what his campaign faces. And this is a moment where he can potentially dispel some of those optical questions. And that's why it matters more for him tonight, probably, than his opponent.
Thanks for letting me fill in for a few days.
I'm very grateful, and I'm just glad I'm going to get to come back someday.
We'll be watching with you later tonight, John. Thanks.
Thanks, Jeff.
CBS News political director Finn Gomez and campaign reporter Aaron Navarro both join me now from the debate venue in Atlanta. Finn, so you spoke today with a senior advisor from the Trump campaign. What did she say about the plan for tonight?
Hi, good evening, Jeff. We're just a couple hours away from this first presidential debate of this cycle. And again, the first time we've seen these two on the same stage in 4 years. Yes, I did speak to a senior advisor on the campaign, Danielle Alvarez-Ryder, who primarily works and focuses on the communications component of the campaign. But I did ask her specifically, what issues will the former president focus on in this debate? What is he going to target? And here's what she had to say, Jeff.
The thing I'll say is that both gentlemen on the stage will be referred to as Mr. President. And what that means is that voters, as they think about the future and the decision they're going to make, get to contrast two records: a record of success by President Donald Trump and a record of failure, weakness, and dishonesty by Joe Biden. What the American people are looking for is a discussion about the issues. We know that polling tells us that that discussion includes rising prices, that includes the border, that includes the economy, and that includes the chaos at home and abroad under Joe Biden's failure.
Now, that is the outlook and what we expect the former president to lead with, to focus on. I did speak with another senior advisor on the campaign and asked him about strategy. What was the preparation ahead of this debate with the former president? And he said essentially that they're really gonna target the current president's record, President Biden's record. They're also going to, they say that President Trump is more disciplined than he's ever been before. And they really stress that. They believe that this time around in this debate, it's really going to be focused on discipline. However, he also said, he does have that sort of unpredictable nature, of course, and he expects him to roar, is what this senior advisor said about the former president.
Roar, okay. Aaron Navarro, to you now. We did learn that Mary Trump, but perhaps unsurprisingly, is supporting Joe Biden at the debate against her uncle. What do we know about how the Trump team has responded?
Right. Well, so far, Trump's campaign and the former president have not addressed Mary Trump, his niece, being part of the Biden campaign spin room head on. They attacked what they called radical surrogates, such as Representative Jasmine Crockett and former Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, helping with the Biden campaign, but not addressing Mary herself. And as you mentioned, not a huge surprise. She backed Hillary Clinton in 2016 after Trump was convicted on 34 counts for that hush money trial in New York. You saw Mary Trump on the news, on the airwaves, saying that the jury made the right decision. But her inclusion from the Biden campaign is part of an overall effort from them to show that there is a big tent against former President Trump, from Nikki Haley voters, former Republicans like Adam Kinzinger, and former staffers of his White House. Mary Trump is just the latest name on that list.
Finn, what else are we hearing about the Biden team's plans for tonight?
Yeah, Jeff, I had a really long and detailed conversation with a top Biden official just a little while ago, and he told me that they're focused on two things. And he said this specifically, said punching and being presidential. Punching by going against and being more aggressive towards former President Trump, and allowing him at the same time to tell his story and not allow Trump to tell his story. And also presidential. They may clash, they may counter, but also to remind the audience, to remind the American people that he is in the White House. He's the one who is the president. He is the one who is, dealing with these major issues across the country and world, and to really lean into his record and to tell his story, as opposed to Donald Trump defining that in this debate. I've also talked to Governor Newsom, the governor of California, who says that it's very important to allow President Biden, to really determine and set the agenda, to really show and demonstrate his contrast and visions against Donald Trump. They have very strong, divergent visions of the country, looking ahead and how they'll lead this country, and those two things are really are really going to be focused on, I'm being told, by the president.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Aaron, one more to you. A major part of this campaign, obviously, is the TV and social media ads. There are some new ones out today that have really been flooding the airwaves. What more can you tell us about those?
Well, there's a lot out there from both the campaigns and outside groups, but two stick out to me from each side. The first, the topic of abortion. Biden's campaign says there will be two new ads, including one airing during the debate itself about abortion. This follows the Supreme Court decision in regards to Idaho. And on the Trump side, they have an ad insinuating that President Biden would not be able to serve all 4 years in a second term, and that another vote for President Biden is just a vote for Kamala Harris, his vice president, to take over. Those two stick out to me.
Aaron Navarro and Finn Gomez from Atlanta, thanks so much. Our pre-debate analysis continues after this at 7 p.m. Eastern with a special edition of America Decides, followed by a special report at 8. CBS will also carry this debate, hosted by CNN, starting at 9 p.m. Eastern. Then we'll have post-debate coverage starting at 11 p.m. The Supreme Court handed down several more opinions today, leaving Donald Trump's presidential immunity case and one involving January 6th rioters for another day. One major decision today, the justices ruled that emergency abortions can be performed in Idaho after the opinion was unintentionally released yesterday. The case focused on the split between Idaho's near total abortion ban and a federal law which requires hospitals to provide stabilizing care to patients, including abortions. The ruling did leave key questions unanswered, meaning the issue could likely appear before the justices again before too long. Also today, the justices rejected a nationwide settlement with opioid maker Purdue Pharma, blocked an EPA plan to reduce the spread of smog between states, and granted people accused of fraud by the SEC the right to a trial by jury rather than in-house testimonials. Jessica Levinson joins us for more from Los Angeles on all of this. She's a CBS News legal contributor and Loyola Law School professor. Jessica, first, the abortion case. I get the sense that neither side here, both those in favor of more abortion access and those against, are entirely happy with this ruling.
Well, I think it is a temporary win for the Biden administration. We are talking about a case where we're talking about a hopefully small set of women, where there's a difference between walking into an emergency room in Idaho and your health and life are at risk, where the federal law would say you can get stabilizing treatment, and that might include an abortion, versus the Idaho law that says you can only get that treatment if your life is at risk. I think you're right, though, that everybody acknowledges this is temporary. And that's part of why we saw the split that we did in the court, where we saw the more conservative members of the court saying, I'm ready to decide. We saw Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson, one of the more liberal members of the court, saying, I'm ready to decide. Now, they were ready, to be clear, to decide totally different things as to whether or not there was a conflict between those two laws. But I think, frankly, this case is an acknowledgement by both sides. They're not ready. They're sending it back. But we are talking about not a hugely opening up abortion care in Idaho. It's really about, do you get that care if your health, in addition to your life, is at risk when you're in an emergency room?
Legally speaking, it's pretty fascinating. Turning to the Purdue ruling now, the justices rejected that settlement that would have protected members of the Sackler family from civil lawsuits, but also contributed billions of dollars to combat the opioid epidemic. At least that's what the settlement would have done. What was the reasoning behind this?
So in this case, the court said, you know what, this is not the right vehicle to try and bless this settlement, that we're talking about bankruptcy court, and Purdue Pharma had declared bankruptcy. But as part of this big bankruptcy plan, what the Sackler family and those who made claims against them tried to do is create kind of a side settlement where the Sacklers would get immunity from further liability, and those states and localities and Native American tribes and individuals who were going to sue the Sackler family would get a determined amount of money. And what the court said today is you can do that, but you can't do it as part of a bankruptcy plan. So it really was about reading the bankruptcy statute and saying, this isn't the right way to do that. I will say implications for other big injury scenarios. I'm thinking about the Boy Scouts. I'm thinking about the Catholic Church.
I'm going to try to whiz through these last two cases as well here quickly. The EPA's plan to reduce air pollution, which was to reduce air pollution traveling from upwind states to downwind states, they put that on hold. What would that plan have entailed, and why was there backlash?
So this was the so-called good neighbor plan, where the EPA said that if you emit a lot of pollution, then you should try not to do that because there are other states next to you. Essentially, that pollution doesn't know any sort of state boundaries. And the short version of this is very much like the abortion case. The court said things have changed. We're going to send this back to the lower court. Maybe it will come back to us, but not right now.
Okay, and that's all the time we have for right now. Jessica Levinson, thank you very much.
Thank you.
One of the major topics expected to be addressed during tonight's debate is immigration. Up next, we'll talk to our Camilo Montoyo Galvez to find out how each candidate plans on tackling the issue. Also, we'll speak with a former Obama speechwriter on debate preparation and what tonight's unique format could mean for the candidates. You're streaming The Daily Report.
Coming up, our series. Wait a minute. Tom, is that you working the camera?
Keep leaning out of your close-up.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
I had progressively fallen deeper into the world of online sports betting.
The risk is the rush.
What do you think is driving the spike in popularity?
I think it's legality.
If it's legal, I'm going to use it. There are ways to bet when you are 18.
We've created an epidemic of child gambling.
You can't walk into a male dormitory in a college campus without sports betting happening.
It's America's most neglected problem.
I use sports betting as a way to escape, when in reality, I'm choosing self-destruction. Whatever I had left, it was gone.
The purpose of the industry is to get you to play to extinction. And that means until all your money is gone.
Go to the ends of the earth. Reach for the stars.
Yeah, I just took off. That kind of thing.
That's pretty good. Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
That desired farm, it's a wonderful place to raise children, and it still is.
Promises broken.
Black Americans have been the target of racism and discrimination pretty much from the time they acquired ownership in the land.
Costing black farmers hundreds of billions in generational wealth.
They did everything to make sure we were run off that land.
But communities are uniting to continue the fight.
Collective ownership is powerful.
To keep their land and their dreams alive.
To watch my children play on land that we own means everything.
So land is power.
Most definitely.
40 Acres and a Mule, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
People with developmental disabilities were once sequestered by the hundreds of thousands in institutions.
Many of our fellow citizens are suffering tremendously because lack of attention, lack of imagination, lack of adequate manpower.
Disability activists have since torn down barriers blocking them from living at home or in the community.
We conclude that Title II of the ADA requires states to provide community-based treatment for persons with mental disabilities.
But of the 16,000 people who remain in state-operated institutions, half are in 5 states, and Illinois is one of them.
I don't want to live in the institution. It makes me feel discriminated against.
Do you think there are people living in institutions in Illinois that don't need to be living there?
Yeah, because they're proving it as soon as they get out.
We are about 2.5 hours away from the first presidential debate this election cycle between President Biden and former President Trump. Key issues the candidates are expected to address tonight include immigration and the U.S.-Mexico border. CBS News polling released earlier this month found that more than half of likely voters consider border policy a major factor in their vote for president. CBS News immigration and politics reporter Camilo Montoyo Galvez joins us now from Tucson, Arizona. Camilo, and some pretty serious differences in terms of what each candidate's border policy is. Can you talk about that?
That's right, Jeff. Immigration has quickly become one of the top issues for this election for president in November. And these two candidates have starkly different visions on this highly polarizing issue that is dividing many parts of the country. For his part, former President Donald Trump, as you know, has made immigration a hallmark and a pillar of his political career, and that has continued to be the case. He has promised a radical shift in immigration policy if elected to the White House again, including mass deportations, the largest deportation operation in U.S. history for that matter. Also, ideological screenings for new legal immigrants and an end to birthright citizenship for the children of undocumented immigrants. For his part, President Biden, as you know, does not tend to speak on immigration as often as his predecessor, but recently he has taken sweeping executive action on this issue. In just a few weeks ago, the president issued a new executive order that has partially shut down asylum processing here at the border for those crossing illegally into the U.S. And then he also issued another action that has granted legal status, or that will grant legal status, rather, to the undocumented spouses of U.S. citizens. That Biden administration's officials argue is a more balanced approach to immigration than what former President Trump is advocating for. Jeff.
Okay, Camilo Montoya Galvez, thank you. The National Transportation Safety Board has sanctioned Boeing for putting out information on the agency's investigation into January's Alaska Airlines incident. The NTSB says an unnamed Boeing executive disclosed non-public details during a media briefing this week. The agency says that was against an agreement it has with Boeing. Boeing will now lose access to investigative information that it produces during the NTSB's probe, and it will have to appear at an investigative hearing in August. In a statement, Boeing apologized to the NTSB and said it regretted overstepping with its comments. Boeing said it deeply regrets its comments and it hopes it never happens again. The NTSB investigation stems from a January 5th incident when a door plug blew out midair on an Alaska Airlines flight over Oregon. Boeing has since faced questions and scrutiny over its safety practices. As we head into the 4th of July holiday, the FAA expects today to be the busiest day for air travel so far this year. It is projecting nearly 54,000 flyers to take off throughout the country. The head of the agency, Michael Whitaker, told CBS Mornings that today is the busiest travel day in more than a decade, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. The TSA is expecting to screen 32 million holiday travelers over the next week and a half. The agency also expects anywhere from 30 to 50,000 flights to take off every day between Friday and July 8th. The Harry Potter books put readers under a spell in the 90s, and they are still breaking records to this day. A watercolor painting of the first edition of 1997's Harry Potter and the Philosopher's Stone sold for a record $1.9 million. That makes it the most expensive piece of Harry Potter paraphernalia ever sold. If the image looks familiar, it's because a different title and cover were used on books in the U.S. The painting was created by Thomas Taylor, who was only 23 years old at the time. He was one of the first people in the world to read the original Harry Potter manuscript, and he made that painting in 2 days. With Election Day less than 5 months away, we're tracking what issues are at the top of voters' minds. Ahead, our campaign reporter focuses in on the Latino vote from Las Vegas. You're streaming The Daily Report.
On our places, bright shiny faces.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
Nate has one of the quickest minds I've ever seen.
Tony has a way of making people feel comfortable.
Gail has this unbelievable knack to ask the question that you're asking at home.
I've been told I could talk to a tree, and that's pretty much true.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my 2 good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings, weekdays at 7.
It didn't seem like anything could happen, because nothing ever happens in East Palestine, but it did.
Authorities released toxic fumes from 5 derailed train cars.
Resident, please evacuate.
Acute bronchitis due to chemical fumes.
Did you ever have these problems before the derailment?
No, ma'am.
This neighborhood's not safe no more.
We can assure the community that there's not vinyl chloride entering their communities.
Then why are there so many people feeling these various symptoms of bloody noses or difficulty breathing or bronchitis?
That's a hard question to answer.
We're talking about one of the most blatant releases of a mixture of some of the most toxic chemicals that we've seen in America.
I feel like now I have a duty to warn other communities. If my daughter has to watch me die of cancer, at least it saves someone else. This case.
It's like a screenplay, something straight out of Hollywood.
But it's not fiction. It's 48 hours.
Human remains found this week.
4 families shattered.
There's no physical evidence.
The mystery would haunt investigators for years.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Like a John Grisham novel.
A gripping true crime original. 48 hours. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Stories that inform.
You can be really old at 60, and you can be really young at 85.
Inspire.
How do we unlock the power within ourselves to be who we want to be?
And brighten your day.
The best part of fame is making people feel good. Always send the people home happy.
Make every day a little more like Sunday morning.
Here comes the sun.
Stream now on the free CBS News app.
Welcome to our Dragon capsule here in space.
Sightseers in space, the thrill of a lifetime.
Seeing the Earth from space, it was so exhilarating.
But the risks that come with the territory.
There have been 4 fatal accidents. That's a 1% fatal accident rate.
Might make you look before you launch.
If you had 1 out of 100 airplanes falling out of the sky, we'd have a public crisis.
Space tourism, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Your interview was amazing. I'm Jeff Glor. Here are some additions to our top stories. A mixed ruling for former President Trump today in his classified documents trial. Judge Eileen Cannon rejected his request to hold a hearing on the validity of the 2022 Mar-a-Lago search warrant. However, she did agree to a hearing on a D.C. federal court's exception that compelled former Trump attorney Evan Corcoran to testify to the grand jury. Newly released reports show the state of employment and housing in the U.S. Weekly jobless claims fell 6,000 to 233,000, but continuing claims increased nearly 20,000. Meanwhile, U.S. home sales fell to an all-time low in May as buyers face higher mortgage rates and home prices. The first presidential debate of 2024 is just hours away. In a historic first, a sitting U.S. president will debate his predecessor. President Biden and former President Trump will also face new rules, including muted mics and no live audience. David Litt joins me now. He's a former Obama speechwriter and a best-selling author. David, thanks for your time. Let me start with this. Does having this debate so early at the end of June here raise or lower the stakes?
Well, Jeff, thank you for having me on. I think it's a great question, and I think in a lot of ways it raises the stakes because the summer is often a time when candidates are trying to define their opponents, and this is a moment when either of these candidates might end up defining either their opponent or themselves. I think it's particularly a opportunity and challenge for President Biden because the Biden theory of the case has been once voters tune in, they're going to come back his way. Some of the voters who maybe are, moved from Biden to undecided. And so I think this debate for them, I think part of that theory is the earlier they tune in, the better.
David, when you're talking to a candidate about debate prep and trying to balance creating a viral moment with answering something with substance, what do you say? Are they trying to actively create these viral moments?
Well, who doesn't want a viral moment? But at the same time, I think the most important thing about politics right now is the voters who decide elections don't like politics. And what that means is if we, the American people, hear lines that seem scripted, that seem, there's a really good zinger, then we tune out.
Yep.
And so I think the moment, if there is going to be a moment, it's going to be something very real. That doesn't mean you can't practice and prep and think about what your message is, but it has to come from the heart. It has to come from the candidate. And it's really about identifying what they have to say rather than about putting words in a candidate's mouth.
What do you think of the format? No audience, muted mics when a candidate shouldn't be talking, and commercial breaks.
So I think it's going to be a big challenge. The commercial breaks might be the most interesting and challenging difference in this particular format, because one of the things that this debate, I think, even more than others, is going to be about is this basic sense of how each candidate appears on stage. People worry about Trump's temperament for a lot of reasons. There's certainly concerns about Joe Biden and his age. And so both of these candidates, just their presence is going to matter a lot. And so taking all of those breaks could either help or hurt them. And I don't think we know yet how that's going to play out.
I also think it's interesting that they're going to be positioned so closely together, relatively speaking. I mean, this is not a debate where there's this chasm of 30 feet. I think it's 6 or just 8 feet apart.
Yeah, I think that is all of these little things, right? It's like any sort of competition. The rules that are set out beforehand can have a big effect on the outcome. And I think that's going to be an interesting thing that we may see, because part of President Biden's job tonight, or at least his opportunity tonight, is to get under Donald Trump's skin. I mean, we saw him do that during the debates in 2020, and we saw Trump really lose control, which is one of the reasons why we need a mute button this time around. And so I do think that we're going to see, is that proximity, is that going to make this more challenging for Trump as he tries to keep it together, or did he learn some lessons from last time? And shows up and sort of behaves himself a little bit.
But that's an interesting point you make about talking about getting under their skin, because I think in that first debate in 2020, Trump's goal was to try to get under Biden's skin because he was trailing in the polls, and I think most people agree that Trump failed to do so. He even acknowledged that it wasn't a great debate. You think the script is sort of flipped in a way that Biden needs to get under Trump's skin?
Well, I'm not so much sure that he needs to. I think that the most important thing Biden can do is just get out there and assure Americans that he looks like someone who can do the job. I think he did that in the State of the Union, and I think that's his job again tonight. But I do think that if you look at that 2020 debate, President Trump, he also said something. That was when he called on the Proud Boys to stand back and stand by. And that was a kind of precursor to January 6th. It got a lot of people rightly alarmed, and it was something that slipped out in a moment. I don't think that Trump particularly thought about that in a strategic way. So those kinds of moments where you can get your opponent to say something that is real, it's not a gaffe, it's true, but it's something they may not have wanted to say. If you can do that in a debate, that's very powerful.
You think we're going to be surprised by something tonight?
Yes, but if I knew what it was, I wouldn't be surprised by it.
All right, very good. We'll speak to you again tomorrow and find out. David, thank you very much.
Yeah.
All right. We're going to head to Las Vegas now, where CBS News campaign reporter Nydia Cavazos has been speaking to Latino voters there ahead of this debate. Nydia, Latino voters were critical to Joe Biden's win in 2020. As you know, they're expected to play another crucial role again this year. What issues do they say matter to them?
Jeff, Latino voters here in the state of Nevada ahead of this first presidential debate say that what most matters to them continues to be the economy. Here in Nevada, Latino voters are concerned about the rising cost of living here in Nevada and also their wages. And it's important to note that we have to remember that Nevada has a very large service industry. So these are a lot of hotel workers, restaurant workers who are concerned about their economic status as we approach these elections. But this is not the only issue of importance that they continue to mention. We often hear on the campaign trail across battleground states, including in Nevada, that they're also concerned about immigration. On one hand, we have several Latino voters who say that they support and they want more executive actions from President Biden. But on the other hand, we also have other Latino voters who say that they want more border security and they consider the constant flow of immigrants to the southern border unfair, as they say that they often get more help than those immigrants who have lived here for many, many years. And so we get a mixed variety, mixed opinions when it comes to Latino voters. But we know for a fact that they're going to be listening in closely to tonight's debate. And let's hear what they have to say.
I am leaning a little more towards Biden, but I can't confidently say I'm particularly, partial to one another. My reasoning behind that is I feel both of them have done things that have been better for the community, some things that have not been so good. I understand that Trump has a certain track record which hasn't been the most Hispanic positive.
In this case, we spoke to many young Latino voters, and this is what we often come across. When it comes to young Latino voters, they're often undecided. So tonight is going to be very important. They're going to be listening in to what both candidates have to say, as they're still undecided, they're still shopping around, and they're trying to make up their minds well ahead of November of 2024.
Nydia, as we know, wholesale immigration reform once again did not happen this year in Washington, which led the White House to issue this executive order. How is that being received by the Latino community?
Well, yesterday I got the chance to speak to several DACA recipients here in Nevada, and what they said is that despite the fact that Biden did roll out several executive actions a couple of weeks ago, particularly for DACA recipients, that some of them are not necessarily benefiting from these executive actions, and so they feel that they've been abandoned by President Biden. And so it's a combination of several, DACA recipients, Latino voters all across battleground states who are calling on Biden to fulfill his campaign promises from back in 2020. So in a sense, they feel that they've been abandoned, but on the other hand, too, they fear a potential Trump 2025. And so we get, again, mixed opinions from Latino voters.
So what have voters told you they want to hear from the candidates tonight?
Definitely immigration. They want to see President Biden and former President Donald Trump address the economy. But what I often hear from young Latino voters, too, is that they really want to hear some sort of substance when it comes to climate change and, of course, abortion. We know that Democrats and the Biden and Harris campaign have been trying to mobilize voters across battleground states, particularly when it comes to abortion. And so this is one of the issues that we often hear from young voters, that even when they say that they're undecided and they're not so enthusiastic about either Biden or Trump, they say they really care about these particular issues.
Okay, Nydia Cavazos, thank you very much. Last year's Canadian wildfires emitted nearly 4 times more carbon dioxide than airplanes do for a single year. So says research from the World Resources Institute and the University of Maryland. That's about 3.28 billion tons of CO2, according to a study update that has not, we should mention, been peer-reviewed yet. The fires turned skies a bright orange as far south as New York City, and smoke even traveled across the Atlantic Ocean to Europe. A heat dome settling over the southern United States is expected to stay until at least July 4th. That means some areas could face potentially triple-digit heat every day until this dome passes. Dallas alone had feels-like temperatures reach up to 116 today. Meanwhile, parts of the Midwest are still grappling with flood threats thanks to ongoing severe storms. For more on both the heat and the storms, here's meteorologist Mike Bettis from our partners at the Weather Channel.
Staying hot across the south, but maybe not as hot as it's been in recent days. You take a look at some of the heat that we'll see tomorrow. Sweltering heat for the plains in particular. It's going to include a place like Houston. It's going to feel like 106, going to feel like 110 for us in Dallas. And places like, say, Port St. Lucie here in Florida is going to feel like 104 when you factor in the ambient air temperature and then the humidity. High pressure is really increasing the humidity into the weekend, so dew points are just sticky, right? It's very uncomfortable to be outside. And if you look at this weekend's numbers, it's going to feel like 101 in Atlanta this weekend. It's going to feel like 106 in Jackson, Mississippi. We also have storms that we're going to watch here across the middle of the country on Friday from I-35 in Des Moines back to like a Colby, Kansas, or Dodge City. Heads up for storms here that could produce large hail as well as damaging winds that might exceed 75 miles an hour. You can see all the storms erupting in many of these spots. We've been recently hit by heavy rain, and so flooding becomes a major concern, including here from the Quad Cities back toward Kansas City. And for more coverage, you can always watch the Weather Channel on cable and now live on your favorite TV streaming device.
Mike Bettis, thank you. A new study published by the National Institutes of Health found that daily multivitamins do not help you live longer. In fact, healthy people who regularly consume multivitamins were 4% more likely than non-users to die in the study period. The study analyzed data from about 400,000 adults over the course of 20 years. While researchers say multivitamins do not increase longevity, they do advise individuals to ask their doctors if supplements would help in their everyday lives. Still to come, Iran is holding a major election tomorrow, but many eligible voters say they're choosing to stay home. We'll explain why. You're streaming The Daily Report.
Washington is the seat of power. National security, foreign policy, global economics, every story comes through Washington in some way. We bring some of the most powerful voices in America to the table. We don't just ask the questions, you have to go deeper. We try to understand what's at the heart of the issue we're talking about, to then come forward with solutions.
Face the Nation on CBS.
The justices ruled that Harvard and the University of North Carolina violated the Constitution.
In the aftermath of the Supreme Court decision to end affirmative action in college admissions, uncertainty sets in for some students of color.
Affirmative action really gave us an equal opportunity.
CBS Reports explores the historic decision and what it means for those chasing an opportunity to change their lives.
I knew that college was the ticket to break this cycle.
The end of affirmative action, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Okay, let's go.
You guys good?
Hey.
All right, we good?
Keep going. The clock, it's ticking.
Off we go.
60 minutes.
60 minutes.
60 minutes.
It's time for 60 Minutes, Sundays on CBS.
An original documentary from CBS reports.
AI is among the most world-changing technologies ever.
Curing diseases, scientific breakthroughs, making lives better.
They can help us with medical discoveries, scientific discoveries, doing better agriculture, having cures for things like Alzheimer's.
It's also going to really transform the way we work.
The uplifting potential of artificial intelligence is limitless.
It gives you a friend, somebody to chat with 24/7 that is non-judgmental. He makes me feel loved and desired.
And so are its downfalls.
The problem with all this AI is that it's unpredictable and uncontrollable.
The choices we make now will have lasting effects for decades, maybe even centuries.
The ChatGPT revolution, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
We are about to see American weapons in the hands of Mexican cartels.
A gun pipeline to Mexico.
We are arming the cartels.
100%, no doubt about it.
Happening right under our noses.
Who's doing something about this? Nobody.
A CBS Reports exclusive.
Most Americans have no idea that we are effectively arming the enemy next door.
This is the story the American people need to know.
Arming cartels, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
America Decides, taking you inside American democracy.
The most important stories on a day-to-day, hour-to-hour basis.
You're going to hear a lot of reporting.
It is clearly a pivotal moment.
Gun control, the economy, education.
Both sides of the political aisle fight it out for power.
Bringing you the analysis that you need.
Thoughtfully, with context.
Be part of the conversation.
On CBS News Streaming.
Welcome to America Decides, Monday through Thursday at 5 p.m. Eastern.
Israel has ordered Palestinian civilians to evacuate eastern Gaza City. Local officials reported the Israeli military was carrying out airstrikes in parts of the city that had already come under heavy fire during the early months of the war with Hamas. Meanwhile, Israel is fending off rocket attacks from Iranian-backed Hezbollah along its northern border. CBS News foreign correspondent Imtiaz Tayeb has more from Tel Aviv. Imtiaz?
Well, Jeff, tonight we've learned that Hezbollah fired over 40 rockets across that northern border with Israel. Many of those rockets landed in the upper Galilee. We also understand that Israel's Iron Dome missile defense system was able to take some of those rockets out. But it really just underscores how tense the situation on that northern border is. And when you consider less than 24 hours ago, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu traveled to the north saying that Israel would be, quote, victorious in any war against Hezbollah. There are growing concerns right around the world, including in Washington, that a full-scale war between Israel and Hezbollah is closer now than it ever has been since the October 7th attacks, and both Israel and Hezbollah started trading fire with each other, something they've been doing consistently since then. Having said all of that, CBS News has learned that Israeli officials have told administration officials that what they hope to achieve in southern Lebanon, in that area where Hezbollah is to create some sort of a buffer zone they believe could be about 3 or 4 miles long if they target that area quite heavily. But we understand that the administration has made it clear that they think if that is indeed something Israel tries to do, it could provoke an all-out war with Hezbollah, something the United Nations has called apocalyptic. Jeff.
Imtiaz Tayeb, thank you. Iran is holding its presidential election tomorrow to replace President Ibrahim Raisi, who died in a helicopter crash last month. But many Iranians say they'll be staying home Friday instead of heading to the polls. CBS News senior foreign correspondent Elizabeth Palmer is in Tehran to help explain why.
Life in all its rhythms and routines carries on in Iran, but it's hard. Inflation is running at over 30%. The young can't find good jobs, and even after mass uprisings in 2022, women are forced to wear headscarves, though some bravely disobey. With so much to worry about, you might think voters would be all fired up to pick a new president after the religious ultra-conservative Ebrahim Raisi was killed in a helicopter crash last month. But not so.
For the past
few weeks, all the candidates have been staging election rallies like this one to gin up a little bit of excitement for an election that millions of Iranians simply regard with apathy. There were 6 candidates, true, and they took the stage for national debates. But every one of them had to be cleared to run by Islamic clerics. And not one of them, 5 hardliners and a moderate, has the clout to bring fundamental change. For this election to have any credibility at all, more than 50% of the electorate has to turn out. So the pressure on Iranians to cast a ballot is on. On Tuesday, hoping to head off an embarrassingly low turnout, Iran's supreme leader urged Iranians to cast a ballot. Will you vote on Friday? Hasti didn't need any encouragement.
That's sad.
Yes, 100%, she told us. This is my country, so I must vote. But almost everyone else we spoke to said they'd be staying home. Are you going to vote?
No, definitely not.
Why?
Because I believe that whatever they say is totally a lie.
What makes you the most angry about them?
It's not their fault. They don't have the authority to implement whatever they think their plans in the country.
The bottom line, Jeff, is that as long as the supreme leader is setting the agenda on issues like, for example, women's rights or the policies that reinforce U.S.-led sanctions, people from all walks of life are going to register their protest by sitting this election out.
Elizabeth Palmer, thank you. Supporters of Bolivia's president rallied in his support Thursday after a failed coup against his government a day earlier. This video from Wednesday shows armored vehicles and troops trying to force their way into the presidential palace in the city of La Paz. According to the Bolivian government, 17 people were arrested, including the army chief, for their alleged involvement in the attempted government takeover. The failed coup attempt comes as the South American country struggles with a deepening economic crisis ahead of elections next year. Still to come, as President Biden and former President Trump get ready to face off on the debate stage, we'll look back at some of the most memorable moments from podiums in history. You're streaming The Daily Report.
Go to the ends of the earth.
Right now.
We got something crazy. And reach for the stars.
Here we are.
Time.
Yes, it's my comeback.
Hey, this is pretty fun.
But wait, there's more. Experience thought-provoking.
I'm open to the idea of being a human being.
Innovative and truly original reporting.
Look through a telescope and go, wow.
Because there's always something new under the sun on CBS Sunday morning.
At this moment, terrorists could be plotting another attack.
9/11 triggered a counter-terrorist system that included a secret database.
This person needs a closer look.
A growing list of nearly 2 million people, including some Americans who say they're innocent.
For 1 hour flight, I have to spend 6 hours to go and come back.
CBS Reports explores the system, the people responsible for it, and those pushing for change.
I'm not fighting against them. I'm fighting for them to do the right thing.
The Watch List, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Don't miss true crime anytime you want, anywhere you go. With the 48 Hours podcast. Real crimes, real lives, real justice.
There's some questions that have to be asked and need to be answered.
Listen to 48 Hours on Apple Podcasts.
An original documentary from CBS Reports.
Imagine yourself in Manhattan with no police, no army, no mayor.
The people of Haiti stare down poverty, corruption, natural disasters, and violence.
90% of the guns that are used by gangs in Haiti are American guns.
But with an unbreakable spirit and eternal optimism.
There are days where I cry, but we can't be discouraged. We still believe in Haiti.
They're still able to look ahead with hope.
Haiti is on the brink of transformation, a radical shift. Haitians are coming together and saying things must change.
Fighting for Haiti, now streaming on the free CBS News app.
Hey there, welcome to The Uplift.
I thought she was a groom, and I stepped back and I went, oh, you're the queen.
She's going to be with me every instant that I'm alive.
I just wanted to see if you'd go to Disneyland with me today.
I look over at him and he's smiling.
I'm going to remember that the rest of my life.
They told us when he was going to be born, he was only going to live for 30 minutes. It's really a miracle that he's with us today.
The Uplift. Stream now on the free CBS News app.
When you wake up in the morning, we want to be your go-to team.
On our places, bright, shiny faces.
I don't go to work in the morning. I go for coffee with my two good friends, and we talk about the world.
Your morning routine just got better. CBS Mornings.
A CBS News investigation. People looking for love, finding their life savings gone.
This could happen to anybody.
And sometimes losing their lives. Anything for love. Now streaming on the free CBS News app.
A massive asteroid large enough to wipe out civilization as we know it passed by planet Earth today. We were never in any danger. This animation from the European Space Agency shows it didn't come nearly close enough to threaten us here at home, but it clocked in at about the size of Mount Everest. The asteroid passed us at a distance 17 times greater than the distance from the Earth to the Moon this afternoon. A second asteroid will pass between our orbit with the Moon Saturday morning. If you have a telescope or even some powerful binoculars, you might be able to see it if the skies are clear. Moments ago, the Los Angeles Lakers selected USC guard Bronny James with the 55th pick in the second round of the NBA draft. James is the son of the NBA's all-time leading scorer, LeBron James. So the two are set to become the league's first ever father-son duo. The 19-year-old guard averaged 4.8 points per game after playing half a season for the Trojans. In almost every televised presidential debate since the first one in 1960, there have been moments that stuck with the audience. Here are some of the most famous and infamous exchanges in presidential and vice presidential debate history.
That I can get something positive done on behalf of the people. That's what the question in this campaign is about. It's not only what's your philosophy and what's your position on issues, but can you get things done? And I believe I can.
Nice to meet you. Hey, can I call you Joe? Okay, good. Thank you. Thank you, Gwen.
I will not make age an issue of this campaign. I am not going to exploit for political purposes my opponent's youth and inexperience.
Up next here, my colleague Caitlin Huey Burns has a special edition of America Decides from the Spin Room. For all of us here at the Daily Report, thank you for spending the hour with us.
Okay, so let's just start at the beginning.
Well, let me start with this. What is at stake here?
What is the answer then?
Do you know why? You want me to just keep going?
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Were there death threats?
How is this possible?
What's wrong with that argument?
Are you saying they lied?
Have you told the government that?